Hey guys, Valve just released a new update of SteamOS 3.8.0. It's called Second Clutch. This update adds some very important features to SteamOS, with the biggest being initial support for Steam Machine hardware. There's also a ton of fixes for third party hardware as well, like the Legion Go 2 controllers uh, on third party hardware. So let's jump on in and take a look at it. Okay, so we are here on the SteamOS 3.8.0 preview page. It's called Second Clutch, as I stated earlier. So let's go into some of the details that have been going on with this. So this update is for the Steam Deck preview channel and includes new features that are still being tested. You can opt into this by going to Settings, System, and System Update channel. It says that there's a known issue that users not currently opted into the preview channel updates may be automatically returned to the beta channel. This has happened to me pretty often on my Lenovo Legion Go 2, and it's nice to see that this can be worked around with by enabling advanced update channels and developer settings, and will be fixed in an upcoming Steam client update. So, biggest one here, initial support for upcoming Steam Machine hardware. Do I think that this necessarily means that Valve is going to release Steam Machine sooner? Probably not, due to the RAM apocalypse that we have going on, but it's nice to see that they have added initial support for it, and you'll see as we go through later on some of these updates here, and we'll talk about some of the things that they've clearly been thinking about when it comes to Steam, the Steam Machine, and how it's going to work on like a TV and stuff like that. So they updated the Arch system base. That's also cool, right? Always having a newer version of Arch in there is good. They updated graphics drivers with performance and stability fixes. Okay. They've got some other things here, but they fixed the FSR badge remaining off in the performance overlay, even if it was initially active. I'm a big nerd. I like watching my stats, and if I have FSR turned on, I want to know it, and I will keep that up there on the screen sometimes, or I'll just look at it real quick to see if FSR is actually active. They fixed an issue with certain titles, such as SpongeBob SquarePants, Titans of the Tide, where the game window could have an incorrect position. I don't particularly know what this means because I don't own this game yet. I'm waiting for it to go on sale, but I would assume that it means that maybe it's shifted on screen and that it just doesn't look right. They improved support for certain USB racing wheels and USB devices that boot in a non-standard mode. Frequently, these are devices that appear as USB storage devices with a driver installer and must be switched to their normal mode by the OS. This is going to be huge for people who have like those who have driving setups for when they're playing games, and say they've got the biggest thing will be for the Steam machine, right? Or another PC if you have SteamOS installed on that, and you're playing it on your TV, and that way that means that the USB racing wheels and stuff like that will work, right? Just out of the box. So they talk about Steam Deck controller firmware updates, now display update progress on the splash screen. And so next is Bluetooth, right? So they re-enabled Bluetooth Wake for the Steam Deck LCD. I've seen on Reddit that people have had a lot of problems with waking Bluetooth on the LCD Steam Deck, which when initially that came out for the OLED model, it wasn't available for the LCD Steam Deck right away. And I saw a bunch of jokes about this from people on Reddit who were making re-enable the Bluetooth Wake function. So for audio, detect HDMI channel count and expose surround configuration if available. Again, this is clearly Valve planning for to have the Steam machine be in someone's living room and underneath the TV, because I know I have a multi-channel setup right downstairs, and not that not that I right now need it because I'm upstairs, right? I'm in my computer room, but I've been thinking about bringing my desktop downstairs so I could use my surround sound setup when I play games. I like that they added the accessibility option to force mono audio output, right? Some people may just want to listen to their to things mono, maybe if they have hearing issues, right? I certainly have some hearing issues having been in the Navy for so long. So the fans in CIC are quite loud. So So for desktop mode, they updated KDE Plasma from 6.4.3 or 2 version 6.4.3 from 6.2.5 and now uses Wayland by default. They fixed several cases of reduced performance in desktop mode compared to game mode. I'm sure that there are those of us who do play in desktop mode pretty often when we're using SteamOS. They improved support for rotated displays. That is going to be huge for the Legion Go, the original Legion Go, which uses a portrait display versus a landscape, right? Better scale factor out of the box on TVs, add support for external HDR displays, VRR displays, and support per display scale factor. So, just like I mentioned earlier, that is going to be huge for using SteamOS on a TV, right? I have an LG OLED downstairs, right, which has VRR, which has HDR, and it's nice to see that it's going to be added for external. So just like I mentioned again, this is Valve clearly building in and planning for, having a Steam machine underneath a TV or another device that's running SteamOS. So keyboard layout and language are now obeying game mode settings. That's nice that you don't have to do it on both sides or just in desktop mode if you switch it in game mode. They improved windowing behavior for games running in Proton. Sometimes I do run games in Windows on SteamOS and I'll have like a browser up on the side. Excuse me. So I can like play Balatro and then watch like YouTube at the same time, right? So 2 new system firmware BIOS came out. So Steam Deck LCD BIOS version 1.33 and Steam Deck OLED BIOS version 1.14. Now, this is huge for me, I think, and for a lot of people who run SteamOS on like their Lenovo Legion Go 2 or Legion Go S, right? So non-deck improvements to SteamOS are as follows. Greatly improved compatibility with recent Intel and AMD platforms, greatly improved memory management with discrete GPU platforms, meaning someone built a Steam box, like say Bill from the Nerd Nest. He has built himself a Steam box using an AMD discrete GPU, and now it will definitely work better for him when he's using this. I believe he's running Bazzite on that thing, but I have no doubt that eventually he'll install SteamOS to test it. I'm a big fan of him. So they fixed a compatibility issue with the SteamOS chain loader that could cause a boot failure on some desktop systems with recent UEFI firmware. Power button short and long presses now supported across a wide variety of devices. Improved controller support for the 1X Player F1 series, GPD Win 5, Win Mini, Ambernic Win 600, Orange Pi Neo, and Lenovo Legion Go. Added controller support for the 1X Player X1 series and Lenovo Legion Go 2. I am happy as hell about this. I'm going to install SteamOS on my device right after this video. I'm using CachyOS right now, but I want to go back to this and test it out. They added system and controller firmware update support for the Lenovo Legion Go 2. Once again, I'm super stoked for this. Preliminary charge limiting support for Legion Go S, and Lenovo Legion Go 2. Currently only accessible in desktop mode. Okay, that's fine. Added controller RGB LED settings for the Legion Go 2. Man, it just keeps coming for the Go 2. They added controller, TDP control, and speaker audio support for the Asus ROG Xbox Ally series. That, as you all probably know, the ROG Xbox Ally came out last year. So, reduced handheld controller input latency from 5 to 8 milliseconds to 100 to 500 AUS. I don't know if that's microseconds or what. I'll put a little prompt on the screen, but that is insane. Night mode, color vibrance, and color temperature sliders in Steam now work on Z2E and later AMD APUs. That is super dope because, right, my Lenovo Legion Go 2 does run on the Z2E. Seamless boot fixes for Z2E and later AMD APUs, awesome. Automatically handle internal rotated display for some third-party handhelds, right? So I did speak to that earlier in that the Lenovo Legion Go, for example, has a portrait display and not a landscape display. So that's going to be big for that one. Improved motion control support for handhelds with BMI 260 IMUs. SD card reliability improvements for some third-party handhelds. Asus ROG Xbox Ally. Lenovo Legion Go 1. Go S, Go 2, and MSI Claw. Fixed washout colors for Zotac and 1X player handhelds with OLED. That's pretty awesome. I think the Zotac handheld is pretty sick looking, but I, don't have one yet. So, fix some GPU hangs on Phoenix APU devices, right? Tales of Arise and Octopath Traveler 2. Fixed Asus ROG Ally power consumption from fingerprint reader while shut down. That reminds me, I'm really hoping that in their next update, they do add fingerprint reader support to the Lenovo Legion Go 2. That would be super cool. And now some developer options, right? So desktop mode now uses Wayland by default. X11 support can be selected via the Steam Manager developer settings or via the console command SteamOS control. Updated Linux kernel to 6.16. Always great when we get a new Linux kernel. Steam now uses SteamOS Manager to query available desktop sessions and trigger desktop session switching. That's huge. Added support for setting the desktop password in developer settings. I like that. All right, that's great. Initial support for running as a virtual machine guest, Virtuo guest drivers. Added support for third-party devices to trigger the SteamOS boot menu via an EFI variable. All right, I like that. Added custom update verb to Atom-Upt Manager for easy testing of specific builds. System reports now include more audio debug information, right? The more information, the better. And then initial support for LAVD CPU scheduler via SteamOS control set CPU scheduler LAVD. This is pretty huge because the LAVD CPU scheduler is designed for gaming. So that means that if you select this, in theory, right, you're going to have to use a console command, but in theory, your games are going to run better. This was really, the LAVD scheduler was initially really designed for handheld use, right? So that means that for third-party handhelds and for the Steam Deck, in theory, you should be getting better performance from using the LAVD CPU scheduler. I'll probably test this out myself and see if I do get better performance, in some games. And I guess we'll see what happens there. So that is the new 3.8.0 update from Valve for SteamOS. Let me know how you guys feel about this, if you're excited about it. And I will be back with another video later on this week. So thanks, everybody.